For centuries, this medieval city of Prato has been a center of Italian fashion production, a textile hub in the heart of Tuscany, a region renowned for its artistic legacy.
Era un contesto produttivo molto familiare, di impresa familiare. Ha ridotto, ma aveva già ridotto nel tempo.
As the 1990s rolled in, Prato's might as a European fashion hub was under serious threat from growing international competition. But then, things started to change.
Our population is 500,000, more or less it's 500,000. And the official numbers for immigrants in Europe is 300,000, almost 60%.
Immigrants from the high mountains surrounding Wenzhou in eastern China arrived, escaping poverty back home and looking for new opportunities in Europe.
意大利人说这里没有中国人，这个城市就会像鬼城一样。当时来到这里几乎没有华人啊，很少，只有是几百个吧，不会超过1000个，500-600个人吧。现在已经达到，他们说有5万个人，5万人嘛。
The new Chinese labor force was not satisfied with a steady salary from their Italian bosses. Instead, they want to be their own boss.
我们还可以超越他们，因为我们有这种底气，有这种历史性的，有这种文化。
I'm on a journey to find out how an unstructured collaboration between two cities, thousands of miles apart, led to a major change in the Made in Italy fashion label.
在这里，维亚干斯大街64号，这是我第一家的这个公司吧，也是加工厂吧。
就是1989年的时候
，1989
30
年
年前
那时候来的，是
就来到这里。
来到这里啊。
这里当时雇佣了多少人呢？
这里当时工人就2-3个吧。
2-3个人。
2-3个人是自己嘛去拿货，然后呢帮工人一起做，是这样吧。
所以那个时候也不会意大利语。
那时候意大利语一点点，不是很好吧？
住和吃都在这个里面。
都在这里边。
I had arrived in Prato with just one contact, Xu Qiuling, a successful Chinese entrepreneur in Prato and also president of a local Chinese association. When Qiuling first came to Prato in 1989, the two streets around his then workshop where he worked were the city's most densely populated Chinese community.
当时做了10年以后，我等于说那10年就是纯粹是给老外打工了，等于是虽然加工厂我们也是给老外打，我们就是利润非常薄，但是呢，我们也学了很多当地的这些工作方式，是不是啊？所以说就想自己就是说做啊，自己就是就是提高自己这个档次啊。中国人在这里慢慢时间长了也会改变嘛，因为温州人你也知道。大家也有这个温州人的精神，就是说是要把自己把自己做老板的这种概念啊，要怎么样把想自己做老板，而且也比较创新。温州人这个水平是非常好的。
In 2000, Qiuling branched out of fast fashion sweatshops and set up a mid-range clothes-making company, Gupo, which does some of the designs and pays more attention to the quality of the product.
有外国人做设计，这些他们都是意大利人。
That's kind of fascinating to see, Italians and working for the Chinese.
It's a long time. To us, it's not so brand new because it's a long time. I've been working here with Giulini, with Giuppel.
Yeah. How many years have you worked here?
It's from 2003.
At the time when you start to work here, do you feel quite different as an Italian working for a Chinese company?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's a job. Mm-hmm. It's a normal job. It's not important. Chinese, Italian, French, and so on.
At the end of the first day, Qiuling took me to a meal in an Italian restaurant run by a fellow Chinese. I was there that I understand what it really means when a Wenzhou businessmen have dinner together. It's not about showing off their wealth, but more about exchanging information and sharing business opportunities. The rise of Chinese immigrants boosted Prato's economy, but also created resentment. I had read a series of local news articles complaining the Chinese didn't share their profits sufficiently, avoided taxes, and had little care for the local culture. As their numbers grew, it became a political matter, with right-wing politicians promising to clamp down on them. The next morning, I headed over to the town hall to meet another friend of Qiuling, Lamberto Gastri, the former president of the Prato province. As he began a tour around the city hall, I asked him what Prato used to look like when he was a child.
Era molto, cioè, era una vita dove tutti lavoravano tantissimo, lavoravano in casa, lavoravano nelle stanziette dietro l'orto di casa, e poi c'era chi lavorava nelle fabbriche, però il lavoro era molto diffuso sul territorio, cioè i telai a spola, quindi molto rumorosi, erano presenti dappertutto, c'erano migliaia di telai e ogni famiglia aveva o la mamma che rammendava le pezze, o il babbo che aveva il telaio, o il figlio che aveva l'orditoio, era, diciamo, in qualche modo coinvolto nella produzione tessile. E quindi la gente lavorava anche la domenica, il sabato, dove si sentiva crescere l'economia, si sentiva crescere, però a costo anche dei sacrifici importanti sacrificando anche il tempo libero, sacrificando la famiglia, però questo ha creato una ricchezza di base che Prato poi ha in qualche modo mantenuto, non ha sviluppato molto ma l'ha mantenuto.
So, in your opinion, the incoming Chinese immigrants here in Prato, is that a good thing for the city?
L'immigrazione cinese è un fatto, diciamo, epocale, molto importante, ha un impatto forte sulla città perché la sua storia, la storia di Prato è fatta di immigrazioni interne prima della regione toscana e poi anche di tutta Italia, cioè sono arrivate persone in cerca di lavoro prima dalla Toscana e poi dall'Italia, sia del nord sia del sud. L'immigrazione cinese è diversa, è molto particolare, c'è un'immigrazione di una comunità che ha una propria visione delle cose, diversa dalla nostra, che ha una capacità di lavoro enorme, come avevano un tempo anche i pratesi, e quindi prima di tutto il lavoro a qualsiasi costo, in qualsiasi condizione. Questo ha creato dei grossi contrasti e problemi sia con le autorità locali, sia con la comunità italiana.
Things in Prato were getting a little tense every time I brought up the conflict between the Chinese and Italians. I had clearly struck a nerve, and I was keen to dig a little deeper. The next day, I boarded a train 300 kilometers to Milan, the fashion capital of Italy. I was going to meet Dr. Daniele Colonia, an expert in Chinese migration.
The fact that the Chinese were making money while they were losing money. But the fact that they were losing money had nothing to do with the Chinese. It had to do with the fact that the Prato garment district was unable to find a way to relaunch its business model in a globalized economy. And that is not on the Chinese. That's on us. That's on Italians. So during the 1980s and 90s, this system made, so to speak, everyone happy because the Italians would collect rent or have workers doing the dirty work for them at a very convenient price and, at very fast work rates. And this changed when some Chinese entrepreneurs started understanding that they could go beyond this sweatshop model and do their own thing. And they started importing, garments from China. That's when things started to sour in terms of ethnic relations in the Prato area. And that's basically what happened in the 2000s when the fortunes of the Chinese in Prato grew, but the Italian textile manufacturing sector actually started to have its most difficult time ever. And this built up a lot of resentment towards the Chinese.
Why did this Wenzhou people come to Italy, come to Prato?
These people came from the very same villages and the very same lineages that first had left China in the 1920s and 30s. Picked up its pace throughout the 1990s to reach basically a peak around the second half of the 2000s.
Before I returned to Tuscany, I wanted to better understand the people who had given up their lives in China to travel across the world and set up in Prato. So I hopped on a plane and set off for Wenzhou.
So what's this?
Okay, it's a suitcase from the countryside. We just collect this a few days ago. This suitcase is from Italy, from old emigrate to Italy. After Second World War, there was a deportation operation which was organized by the UN, and they collect all refugees in Europe to some port in Italy, and then they sent back to Shanghai by vessel.
There have been 4 major waves for people from southeastern province of Zhejiang, China, setting their foot in Europe. The earliest migration can be traced back to as early as late 19th century. Yan Xiaohai worked as a space engineer in Beijing before giving it all up to return to his hometown to head up the local overseas Chinese bureau, a job that has now consumed him.
There was a lot of expeditions by that time, and our guys, they managed to find a chance to join the expeditions. It was the very beginning. And then I think on 1911, there was a very big flood in our town. The flood almost destroyed everything. And people need to go somewhere to find a new chance to live. From time to time, the amount of people go to Europe increase. The first very big wave began at 1925 and end 5 years later, when the worldwide economic crisis begins. 20 years later, the Second World War begins, and the people, I think everything was stopped. And normally we call the second wave, there's a very big second waves which begin on 1980s. After the new opening up, reform and opening up, people begin to go to Europe and find a new chance again.
It is widely known that people from Qingtian were the first immigrants that traveled to Europe, and there was a reason for it.
Our county is very small. I think we are short of everything. We do not have too much natural resources, and for the country people, for the peasants, they even don't have enough place to work with. For example, one old guy, he got 2 sons, and when these 2 sons get married, so his grandson get less and less place to live and to work with.
But why a great number of people from Wenzhou ended up settling down in Prato, a city 20 kilometers away from Florence, with a population of 200,000? In order to understand that, I visited Zhang Yili, a professor of economics at Wenzhou University, whose research focuses on Wenzhou migrants in Italy.
Hello. Nice to visit Minjay from China Daily. Nice to meet you. Thank you. What a lovely.
For the Prato, it's in the old time it's a textile center in Europe. because in that areas we have a lot of agriculture and they are good for textile. But at 1988 or around that time, the local young men, young people, they don't want to work in their parents' workshop. They want to go large cities as Milano, as Rome, and even they want to go to United States or UK. So the garment center became less developed. They are in very bad need of new labor force.
As the Wenzhou people in Europe are a very tight network and are willing to share their information with each other, it wasn't long before they knew that Prato government launched new preferential policies to encourage more people to move there. So they went.
And this is a very good opportunity for Wenzhounese. Because Wenzhounese, some of them, they have get experienced in Wenzhou because Wenzhou is famous for its for clothes making. And as they got to Prato, they found the Prato industry. They are very similar to they had been done in hometown in Wenzhou or the relatives doing in France.
At that time, people who moved to Prato were not just the Chinese immigrants across Europe, but also the people in Wenzhou who failed to enjoy the benefits of China's reform and opening up policy, but were motivated to make money.
After 10 years of open door policies, reforming areas, these people who in the rural area, they became want to have the mind to make money. They want also to make money, but they have less opportunities than city people live in Wenzhou. They are living just in Qingtian or Wencheng, but they have their relatives in Europe. Even they haven't relatives, they heard the story, how they make money in Europe. So at that time, people want to go abroad to make a deal money.
It was the Wenzhou needs that transferred Prato from textile into fast fashion, or Pronto Moda in Italian.
Wenzhou model is famous for its small community and large market. The people who made the same community just get together. They just joined together. They just got industry cluster. We have this experience in China. So when these people go abroad to Prato, they just bring this experience to Prato. And because they have many experience in shoes, in clothing, so they know how to transfer from the textile into Pronto Moda. Fast fashion is not so expensive because people just want fast. They are fast as seafood in Wenzhou. You got the seafood in the early morning, you sold out in the market in the noon or afternoon. Fast fashion in Prato, just like the very fresh seafood in Wenzhou.
The next day, Zhang picked me up from my hotel to drive deep into the mountains. He wanted to show me the geography of the villages from where the migrants came, that he said would help me understand their drive to get out. This was not the glitzy city of Wenzhou, but several hours' drive into the mountains that surrounded it. Before leaving, I asked Zhang to introduce me to a returnee from Prato, and he took me to meet Zhou Jianjun. Zhou moved to Prato in early 2000, but returned to his hometown in Wenzhou a couple of years ago.
周大哥，您后来是什么原因让你想要去意大利？
我是去意大利受到朋友的影响，04年的时候叫我出去国外，我后来想想一家人就去了国外了，国外回来，04年一直到15年回来，04年到15年的之间是在那个巴拉多开那个小作坊的，到15年我就回来了，回来再创了跟几个朋友互动哈，在这边合作做那个房开啊，做那个装修啊这一类的。
为什么会想到15年的时候从普拉多要回来呢？
这里是那个母亲年龄也大了，需要人照顾，小孩子吧要回来读书，一直就待在中国了。
After an insightful visit to Wenzhou, I thought it was time to return to Italy.
这并不是一张皮，一个料，这就是说是一个怎么讲的呢？这就是像中文艺术品，对。
Made in Italy. These are more than just 3 words on a manufacturing label. They have come to become almost an adage for quality. What makes Made in Italy so special?
I would say beauty, a certain kind of history, a certain form of elegance tied to a job well done, to a fine Italian hand. But now, of course, we also have a fine Chinese hand.
The Chinese fast fashion factories around Prato had been around for over 20 years. They had taken their place at the bottom of the Italian fashion ladder to provide affordable clothing to the European masses. But on my last visit, I heard some Chinese factories that were now breaking into the high-end market, manufacturing for the houses of Gucci, Armani, and Prada. This, I was told, were almost impossible to meet, as the brands didn't want to know that it was Chinese workers making their €1,000 worth handbags. But I had a lead. At one of the banquets I attended in Prato, I had been given the name of a man who could introduce me to a Chinese factory owner, producing for some of the best brands outside Florence. I called and I was told to meet in a car park. But there was no guarantee I could get inside. And first, I needed to meet the middleman. Today, I was to get a break. Chen Mingqing, a Chinese import and export dealer who was acting as my middleman, agreed. And within minutes, we were entering the factory. Italians take the Made in Italy label pretty seriously. So seriously, they even passed a law back in 2009. Companies can claim a Made in Italy tag only on products that are designed, planned, processed, and packaged on Italian territory. Here is the thing. The law doesn't put any restrictions on the workers who make these products. Not all workers are Italian, or even European. That's why it's difficult to get into these factories to see production firsthand. Fu Fanghui is a first-generation Chinese immigrant who now produces bags for high-fashion Italian labels. He requested us not to reveal the names of brands, but agreed for a factory tour.
你正常的看一个包，一个盖子，一个前身，一个后身，还有一个底部，还有一个边，看上去就只有5道程序，其实里面有30个程序。这个就是好像你在画画一样，你想要把这个东西做到精美了，一定要有耐心，一定要有一个过程。他要是没有在这里做7个月，我不会让他在这里做这个。
Fu says at least 6 out of 10 Chinese factories in Florence are producing for big Italian high fashion brands.
因为就是说，慢慢的，这些大的客户相信了我们华人，就是说有这种精神，我们华人能够这么，就是说认真的去对待它这个质量，特别是我们融入了他们的这个文化理念，对。我们华人就是说对这一点，特别是我们浙江这边人，对融入的很快。
When you think of Made in Italy, you don't usually imagine workers from such diverse ethnicities manufacturing that pricey handbag or even a gown. I wanted to better understand this complex dynamic. It can be overwhelming to think just how vastly different is this business model of high fashion production from what the Chinese are traditionally known for: high volumes, low cost, and low price. To Fu Fanghui, presumed quality has opened up a whole new world of possibilities.
一定要有精神，不能把利益看到第一位，一定要把品牌、把质量看到第一位，看成是自己的生命。有这种精神，什么事情都可以做成，我们还可以超越他们。我相信我们中国不用10年的时间会超越他们。
Fu had taken over a factory from his father and driven it through his own ambition to reach far greater heights, even as a relatively young man. The more Chinese factory owners I met, the more I became interested in the next generation. On my first day, Choling had told me he never planned to go back to China because his family were in Prato, and that was their home. I asked my middleman Chen Mingqing if I could meet his son, who, like Fu, was building on his father's legacy by expanding into new markets. But he's no longer content to produce for other brands.
Hello.
He wants his own brand.
Hi, I'm Minjay from China Daily.
I'm Giancarlo, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm good, you?
Good. So, wow, what is this?
Giancarlo is a second-generation Chinese immigrant in Italy. His father came to Italy about 30 years ago and flourished in the import and exports of handbags. Giancarlo was born in Italy, studied in the US, and is back in Florence, expanding his family business. He has launched his own line of handbags, Charm and Shape.
Before my father did, it was like anonymous, like a bag. Everyone had that, and it was a lower tier of quality production. So I'm looking for improving the quality and also improving the commerce itself, the company, because right now, you know, everyone is moving on.
For someone who is of Chinese origin but was born and bred in Italy, I'm interested in knowing how Giancarlo compares his generation to that of his father.
As second generation, we call ourselves like Italianized. I don't know if that's a term, but you know, we like to work more stable hours and have more leisure time because we think it will help us improve our performance during working hours.
The first Chinese immigrants to Italy toiled hard to thrive and raise a family. But the local-born second-generation Chinese is aspiring to be more. It is still early days for Italian-born Chinese designers. Most are still too early in their careers to have made an impact. But one Chinese designer has managed to break the glass ceiling, now regarded in the top tier of Italian fashion design. I boarded a train to Bologna to go and meet her and hear firsthand her story of struggle.
他们13届对我们华人有偏见，觉得我们华人只会 copy 嘛。他说最厉害就是中国人 copy 别人的东西。
To the Italian fashion industry, Xu Yuezhen is almost an antithesis. She is a complete opposite of what the native Chinese are known for here: fast fashion, assembly line production, long work hours, and cheap labor. She is the first native Chinese admitted into the prestigious Milan Fashion Club. Her fashion label, Delve JK, is discussed alongside industry icons like Louis Vuitton, Armani, and Christian Dior. She faced the stereotype of the Chinese immigrant slogging long hours on factory floor, churning out cheap fashion products.
刚开始他觉得是华人，觉得会有偏见，最主要的是有自己的原创。当你想做出自己真正的东西的时候，欧洲人还是蛮认可的。作为二代的话，我觉得他第一要把质量要把关好，因为你把关好质量以后，你的路才会越走越远。
I've traveled throughout northern Italy and back to Wenzhou to see for myself how the Chinese have impacted the Made in Italy label. I heard countless stories of struggles and hardships in early years, to the excitement of building a new business, to the future of innovation and integration. The Made in Italy label continues to thrive, in part thanks to the work of the Chinese.